Hey everyone, my name is Ancupolis and I am the watercolor instructor for Watercolor for Everyone for the Fall OLLI program. Hi, thank you for joining the program. I'm really excited to teach the fall class. And I decided to record this because there are a number of repeaters and artists as well as beginners in the course. And rather than be repetitious, I thought that it might be a good idea to make this video to talk about the supplies list, because there are always a lot of questions that come up about the supplies and why I've listed the things that I have. So rather than waste the first class doing that, I thought I'd make this video and then we can really start painting in the first class. So you should have gotten the list of supplies from someone in the OLLI program, and I would like to talk about them now. So the ideal would be that if you've already painted watercolor before or you have supplies at home, that you use what you have. I'll tell you what the basics are that are needed, and then I will recommend some things to go out and purchase if you don't have those basics at home. So the basics would be, ideally you would need some watercolor pigments, some paints, your normal brush or set of brushes that you have, a normal watercolor paper or watercolor sketchbook, a pencil, an eraser, some glasses of clean water. We'll need 2 for each class, some paper towels, and maybe Q-tips and things like that for blotting. Also some small strips of paper like this for testing colors, and then something to serve as a palette. So something like this, for example, that has different wells, or even something like this. But you don't have to go out and purchase a palette. You could use anything that will wipe clean that you're not extremely overly fond of. Don't use an heirloom, because some watercolor pigments are actually more permanent than others and might stain. Especially if the plate is kind of porous. But anything, even a yogurt lid, plastic yogurt lid or something like that, that's clear or white so you can see the true color that you're mixing, those would work. We'll also need a spray bottle, like a small bottle with water in it. I just used an empty hairspray bottle and I rinsed it out and added water. And this is to sort of mix up the pigments and pre-wet them a little bit. And then if you have a pen, like a fine liner with permanent ink, here I like the Preppy Platinum, then those are good, but not necessary either. So those would be the real basics. And of course, as we do the class, I'll be using different materials and sort of showcasing different materials as options. And then if you wanted to go out and purchase more materials, you can. But you don't have to drop a load of money. And if you're purchasing materials for the first time, then I'll tell you what I recommend and why. Okay, so before I do that, I want to talk about just a little note on watercolors. I do recommend either a tube paint or a liquid paint rather than a pan. So pans are like little squares or circles, and you can often see them in inexpensive kits, and they're dry. And you also, like a travel kit would have pans in it. Travel kits are great for painting outdoors and on location and for actual travel, because they are dry and they're a lot easier to travel with. But they're not that great for this class, and that's because we only have 2 hours. So during the 2-hour class, we'll be mixing up watercolors. And as I'll show you right now when I share my screen, that it is a lot easier to mix up watercolor and get it to the right consistency when you squeeze that pigment out of a tube than it is to do it from a dry pan. So just a couple squirts of water, and you can already start mixing up a nice color here, as you can see. Whereas pans, they take a long time to work up. See, I didn't even add that much water. We'll be working with jars of water, but even just from the spritz bottle, you can mix up a nice pigment. Whereas pans, you really have to work at it, and then you have to scoop them into another area to mix colors. So that takes far too long in our classes. We just don't really have a lot of time. And I've noticed that over the course of the summer session that people struggle with keeping up when they're using pan watercolor. So that's why I recommend tubes. Now, that being the case, you don't need to buy a whole ton of them. I will recommend some. I'll recommend a good sort of basic color kit that includes these are my notes. That includes basically some cool colors, some warm colors, and then earth tones. And we'll talk about color temperature in the course, but all you need to know right now is that these are the following that I would recommend. And when you buy the tube pigments, I would recommend buying some kind of artist grade pigment. So either a Winsor Newton or a Cotman, Grumbacher, Daniel Smith, or other artist grade. How do you know if it's artist grade and not student grade? Well, usually if there's two side by side, then the one that's a little bit more expensive is going to be the artist grade. And if you're buying from an art store, normally the art store's own brand is most often is the student grade. So, and it is, you will get a better bang for your buck, but if all you can afford is the student grade, then that's fine too. So the colors that I would recommend are the following. I'm gonna just stop the screen share so we can chat. So I would recommend ultramarine blue as one of your blues. That has a lot of red in it. And then also a phthalo blue or a cobalt, cerulean, or a turquoise blue, your preference. But you're gonna want kind of a purpley blue, and then you'll want more of a greeny or yellowy blue. Also a cadmium red, which is a warm red because it has a lot of yellow in it. And then alizarin crimson, which is a cool red because it has a lot of blue in it. So two reds, a cadmium yellow, and then a yellow ochre. I would recommend that too. Burnt sienna, Van Dyke brown, and then a green, so like a sap green or hooker's green. Those are both good. And Payne's gray. And then if you would like to buy a black, go for it. There's different blacks out there so you can have fun with it. But we can mix black as well, believe it or not. And we'll learn how to do that in the class. And those mixed blacks are quite nice. But if you like to use a lot of black, you do a lot of buildings or things like that, then, or black cats, you know, then you might want to have some black paints that are already pre-mixed. It just makes it easier. So really that's all you need. I mean, honestly, we could mix anything from the primaries, from 3 different colors. So you don't need to spend a lot of money on pigments. If you want to buy a few more colors, I've listed a few more colors just for fun, just to play around with some things that are different. So that's it about paints. Now about brushes, I'm going to show you my screen again. So I recommend natural bristle hair brushes and not synthetic brushes. Natural bristle brushes are generally made of brown hairs from animals, like squirrel, for example. And that's how you often will know is a brown brush versus a white brush. So yeah, usually when you see white bristles, they're synthetic. Natural bristles are mostly far superior to synthetic. There are some good synthetics and hybrids on the market, but for the most part, even though natural bristles are more expensive, they are going to be a better value in the long run. So number one, they have more cavitation, which means they hold more water, which is essential for the medium of watercolor. So that's the first reason to buy natural bristle. The second is they will last you longer. So if you have ever painted and lost a bristle or 2 or 10 or 20 while you're painting and they get stuck in your painting, then you'll know what I'm talking about. It's very frustrating and distracting and often will ruin your painting. So natural bristle brushes generally do not lose bristles as much as or as easily as synthetic ones do. And so they'll actually last you longer in the long run. So there might be a difference of $2 or $3 per brush, but it's worth it in the long run. You don't need a lot of brushes. I would recommend a couple of just different sizes. So a round brush like this one, and maybe like a small, medium, extra small is what I would say. So you might want like 3 different sizes. Let's see if I have 3 different sizes here. These are kind of the same size. I don't think I have a really big one here, but you get the idea. So they come in numbers. The number will be on the side over here or on the label of the art store. So I would say 2, 4, and 6 on the round brush. If you like to paint bigger paper, then get an 8. because bigger numbers are bigger here. I would also recommend that you get a medium-sized pointed filbert brush, something like this. So it's like a round brush that has a point to it. And it's really nice because you can carve out details, and you can use the point of the brush, you can use the flat part or the side, and you get a lot of different shapes. I would also recommend that you get a large flat brush like this for doing washes, or like this. One is fluffier than the other, but you know, pick one. And because washes are critical, large washes are critical for a lot of different reasons. Then I would also recommend that you buy a script or a rigger brush. So they're very similar. Script brushes are small, thin brushes for doing details. They can be even thinner than this. I don't have one handy, but like this. Rigger brushes are similar, except for quite often they're longer and they have a flat tip. I don't know if you guys can see that. So script brushes are pointed at the end, riggers are flat. They're great for details. And if you want to have fun, you could also buy a fan brush. Fan brushes are tons of fun for details and texture. Okay, so you don't need a lot of brushes. What did I name? 3, 4, 5, 6 different brushes. That's about it. You could probably get away with even fewer than that. And it doesn't really matter what the brand is. There are really fun brands out there, like Rosemary and Company, for example, is one. Another is Paul Rubens. This is Paul Rubens. They make beautiful brushes. Oh, here's a fat brush that have beautiful different shapes and different materials. So this one I can't put the cap on right now. So anyway, there's a lot of different choices out there. Just kind of find one that's affordable and that you like. So that's it for brushes. In terms of paper, I recommend 140-pound watercolor paper that is cold press. So you can see on the papers, they will tell you, is it cold press or hot press, what the pound is, which is the thickness, and then the watercolor paper means it's suitable for watercolor. I like this Canson brand, and I like the 9x12 size. So Canson is great. It's affordable. It's like $5 for 30 pages. And if you're doing smaller paintings, you can get like 2 5x7s out of one of these. I recommend the cold press for beginners because, as you can see here, the paper has a bit of grain to it, or I hope you could see it here. Has a bit of grain to it, and that grain really helps with the process of watercolor. So when you're painting, the paint will actually sort of flow into that grain quite nicely and do half of the work for you. So if you've been doing this for a while, you can really play with any kind of watercolor at all, but for beginners, I recommend the cold press. And anything less than 140 pound is going to buckle when you put a lot of water onto it. So it's great for doing sketches or for practicing, but for the purposes of the class, you're not going to get the same results. So that's why I recommend 140 pound paper. I like Canson, you know, there's a lot of other Strathmores and Arches, which is the better quality. Those are all good. So really you can have fun and get some different ones and try them out. Also, if you want to buy some extras, there's different things that you can buy. So things like masking fluid, for example. Masking fluid is a resist, and we will use it in one of the lessons. I'll show everybody how to do it. So, but there's different things you can use as resist. So if you don't want to buy masking fluid, then you don't have to. But if you want to buy it, you can buy a fine line applicator. It actually, you can squeeze it out. So that's kind of cool. Otherwise, you can just buy one in a jar and you use a little brush with it. Also, tracing paper is helpful for many reasons, like masking and other things. And different pencils, for example, to have fun with those if you like. Those are really like the basics of the course, and that's all you need. If you have any questions at all about what to buy, please go ahead and shoot me an email. It's AnnCupidDraws@gmail.com. and I'll see you in class on Tuesday. Thank you very much.